everybody, and welcome to M365 Game Changers. I'm happy to have Sean McDonough with us today. And most of you that are in the community know Sean. He's got 20 plus years experience, hardcore dev, published 2 books, is a Microsoft MVP, and I could go on and on about with accolades, but Sean, maybe you can give us a quick data dump on what qualifies you to give advice today.
Well, I think you might have just as much luck pulling somebody off the street, but I'll give it a shot. As Jim said, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I got started with SharePoint back in 2004 and have been working pretty solidly with it ever since. It's been a focal point in my career. And I started a company in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bitstream Foundry, providing solutions and services for SharePoint. I've come at SharePoint from many different angles: developer, IT pro admin, evangelist, product manager. I was a product manager for IDEA for a number of years. So I've kind of seen it from multiple angles. And I frequently deal with customers and folks who are not really dyed in the wool SharePoint people. They see SharePoint as a means to an end.
And they don't really get it.
Right. They just want the platform to do what they need
Right.
it to do, which is perfectly reasonable and understandable.
Right. You know, my CIO said, put in SharePoint, so let's put it in. You know, I kind of equate it to build me a house. How many floors do you want? I don't know. How many rooms? I don't know. Do you want a pool? I don't know. What will it cost?
Yeah.
And
ask how high while you're jumping.
Exactly. You know, another analogy that I like to use is SharePoint is kind of like building, making a movie. You've got special effects people, and you've got sound people, and you've got artists, and you've got all of these different, you know, you've got Foley people, and it's impossible to know everything. And that's where I think people like yourself and MVPs bring something to the table because they've gotten bloodied across the board. So
yeah, it's like the old adage of, you know, trying to blind men trying to describe an elephant. It depends where you grab onto it from.
Exactly. Well, let's jump in. So, as I kind of explained in the intro, the goal here of these interviews is they're bite-sized. We're keeping them under 9 minutes. We're getting big guns on, like yourself, and the goal is to focus on the strategic rather than the tactical. Meaning, not how do you do this, how do you do that, or a deep dive into the cool new feature. But if you were talking to, let's say, a CIO, what advice would you give them from the perspective of, you may have this list of things already put together of what you want to do. Let me tell you what's really going to happen and what you really want to think about, and what advice or suggestions or strategies or maybe even tools would you recommend?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. It's less of an issue nowadays, but when SharePoint was first introduced by Microsoft as a development platform, because Microsoft was very insistent upon defining SharePoint as a platform for applications rather than an application itself. The problem we had a handful of years ago was everybody was trying to build an application in SharePoint, whether it was the right tool or not. And I can't tell you how many different projects I've pitched where I said, SharePoint is not the best fit for this. You can do it in SharePoint, we can do it, but we're going to be building all sorts of custom parts and development. It's going to be a pain to maintain. You really ought to go look for something off the shelf that more closely matches what you've got.
Yeah, I find that Microsoft has made the licensing very confusing for a lot of people, that they want to build something in Power Apps and they want to use Flow and they don't understand what the licensing repercussions are. And, you know, do I need an E5? Do I need an E3? And that always confuses people. And then I'm also finding that people hear M365 and they think SharePoint, and they don't understand that SharePoint is a tiny little piece of the puzzle. Although it drives most of the puzzle, it's not the entire puzzle.
Sure. Yeah, it's implicit in much of the plumbing of Microsoft 365. So that's a
Right,
good
and
point.
you can't fight the marketing engine at Microsoft. If they say it's going to be Teams, it's going to be Teams,
Right.
and you can argue kicking and screaming, or you can just jump on the bandwagon. I-
Yeah.
From a developer perspective, are there specific things coming down the road that you're allowed to talk about that you think developers should start getting very experienced in now, that so
Um,
they're not caught in a bind or behind the curve?
yeah, those of us in the MVP community occasionally hear about things that are coming down the road. We can't really talk about those, but
Right.
I will say that time invested in the Power Platform is time well invested at this point, because Microsoft, again, is really trying to drive citizen developers where it used to focus on, hardcore devs and hardcore IT admins,
Right.
and the folks you needed to have very specific skill sets in those realms. Nowadays, they want someone who's a power user to be able to
Right.
develop their own sorts of solutions.
Are there any particular tools outside of the normal ones that you recommend that maybe people aren't aware of that you find helpful?
Um, I would say that most of the tools I use are ones that are on the tried and true paths. I don't have any special sauce, but
Gotcha.
I do get a lot out of uh, development tools like Fiddler.
Right.
Fiddler in particular, particularly nowadays with front end development. If you have the fortune to build in the SharePoint framework, the full stack, developer tooling and testing is part of that, whole stack of development that's been put in place by Microsoft. You've
Right.
got options there, but for a number of other platforms, and we'll say things that augment SharePoint Online, oftentimes I'm writing plain JavaScript. Fiddler is one of
Mhm.
those things that is very useful to me because it has a auto responder functionality, which allows me to uh, seamlessly behind the scenes use Fiddler to transmit requests that would normally go across the wire back to my file system. So I can be working in a closed environment,
Right.
and
Right.
it's as if I'm working online against a site.
I want to thank you for your time. Everyone out there, this is my first time interviewing, so thank you for bearing with me as I'm stiff and I'm wearing my glasses, which I realize are reflecting. Uh, Luckily, Sean is a great guy and has been very patient. So, Sean, if people want to reach you, what do you recommend? A LinkedIn
You reach out to
website?
me through LinkedIn, my blog, SharePointInterface.com, Sean at Bitstream Foundry .com is another
Okay.
way to get hold me. Email, and Bitstream Foundry we've got a small one, but we've got a site online. So, and there's a forum there if you want to send questions through. But there are multiple. If you search Sean McDonough in SharePoint, you're going to get all sorts
You're
of
going to get
hits.
buried.
Yeah,
Well, I
just Sean McDonough alone, you're going to get the sportscaster. I'd
okay.
love to say that I was my side gig, but that's not me.